Hello and welcome to our Next.js office hours webinar. Today is an exciting one. So we have 4 different members of our development team that are joining us today to talk about their areas of expertise in Next.js. This is your chance to learn directly from them and ask any questions that you might have. So as always, this is your session. Feel free to interrupt any time, drop your comments in the comment section, and we will kind of address them as we go. To start, I am joined by Joel, who's been writing code before you were writing sentences. Hey, Joel.
Hopefully not before you were born. That would make me super duper old.
How's your day going?
It's going great. I'm super looking forward to this. It was always one of my favorite things to have like office hours when I was in university, to just walk in on a prof who's got the door open and just ask questions, and you learn so much more, all the little sort of like nitty gritty inside details, get the inside track. Plus, I always love doing webinars with you, man, because you appreciate my jokes.
I do appreciate your jokes, and I hope you came prepared.
So a developer, an IT guy, and AI walk into a bar. And the bartender says, what'll it be? Well, the developer says, I'll take a Java, no exceptions. The IT guy says, just something on the rocks, my servers are down. And then AI says, surprise me, I've got deep learning. And the bartender replies, this round's on the house, just don't loop all night, guys. Right?
Yeah, good. I'm glad you came prepared. I didn't come prepared this time, but I'll see if I can think of one before the end.
Jeez.
I know. Cool. So Next.js, I know you had some stuff that you wanted to kind of kick it off with as far as like hosting and middleware goes. What do you got?
I mean, from an intro point of view, I hope everyone understands the significance of Next.js in the web development world. It is probably the most popular modern web development framework. It started off as one thing, and now it's morphed into a much, much bigger thing. And I know one of the things that we talk about with our customers and partners who are working with deploying websites and building websites, we often recommend Next.js for folks. But a lot of times it's like, where do I host it? Is a big question. And I would say the answer to that I would say is the 2 sort of best hosting platforms are Vercel. Now, Vercel is a little bit controversial because they are the company that also sponsors the open source Next.js project. Next.js is open source. And I think they have a lot of like inside hooks that they've built in to make it the best experience. But Netlify is a competing company that does, I would say, almost as good a job. In some cases, I think a slightly better job for some things. So Next.js could be hosted in Vercel, Netlify, but there's lots of other platforms out there that are really good. If you're like everything has to be on AWS person, AWS Amplify is really good as well. It has really amplified its ability to sort of handle the Next.js features that are out there. There's another one out there. If you're an Azure person, there's a whole, obviously you can host it just in a Docker container, either on Azure or AWS, but Azure actually has a specific service called Azure Static Web Apps. And it's kind of a misnomer because it's not just for 100% static sites. Next.js site running in like server rendering mode or incremental static mode can do that. By the way, Next.js has lots of modes that it can run in. One is 100% static. You can make 100% server rendered. And you can also do something called ISR, which is incremental static regeneration. It's like a terrible term, but it's very cool. So where you're deploying it, just make sure that it kind of handles your use case. And you can kind of change modes later on if you say, oh, I thought it should be static, but now I need to be server rendered. But just kind of, you need to have the requirements of that website that you're deploying or the app understood for where you're going to deploy it. And I would say when people get caught into bad things with the hosting, it's almost always because it's too much compute. They're doing too much server rendering. So try to get the balance of server plus static. And also look at middleware. Middleware is a really special kind of a thing. It runs on every single request. Middleware.ts, it's a piece of code that it should be running on the edge. So when you deploy to Netlify or Vercel, that code runs on the edge. So on like the CDN before it gets to your origin server. If you deploy pretty much anywhere else, it doesn't, not yet. So there is something coming called adapters. Next.js adapters that will allow someone to build a platform that'll like to say, where's your code running in the origin and how does it handle all of the Next.js features, but then how does it get the middleware deployed to like an edge platform? So that isn't quite figured out yet. That's in something called RFC. So it's like an open source term for like, hey, we're looking for ideas on how to do this. But the Next.js / Vercel team have promised adapters. I really hope they come out soon because they're going to give us a lot more options for how to deploy things and make it so that we can write great middleware. Middleware has a lot of great values that it puts in. I don't know if folks out there are using it, but it's a really cool thing. So those are really big concepts that we try to help people with, and definitely want to have more conversations around those.
Cool. And I know something that we wanted to talk about as well, that we also have somebody here to join us for, is around partial pre-rendering and website performance. So for that, I'm going to bring on Aaron to the stage. Hey, Aaron, how's it going?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Aaron is our developer experience guy. He has, I would say he's powered by Red Bull and sleepless nights. Does that sound about right, Aaron?
It sounds absolutely correct. Yeah, I turn coffee into code. That's my mantra.
Yeah, so Aaron, you work on a lot of our SDKs. You work on a lot of our starters, specifically the Next.js starter and the SDKs, and a lot of other stuff for that. But tell us about what is this partial pre-rendering thing? What does that mean?
Oh, partial pre-rendering. It kind of touches on that idea of, static sites and dynamic sites. And up until partial pre-rendering, we were forced into a direction. We either had to pick, a statically rendered page, or we had to pick a dynamically rendered page. And of course, with that comes, your SEO fallbacks of your site performance. So in the latest version of React, they've brought something out called suspense and fallback, so that we can actually load components at the component level without having to define the entire route as being static or dynamic.
Okay.
And this allows for just lightning fast loading, where our static content can build around our dynamic content. And it's shown crazy results.
So the idea here is, so what's the use case here that I would have? Like, what? Just name a couple of use cases that I would want to use this in.
Sure. So a great example is a personalization of your website. So if you have, for example, members that you want to access it, have specific data load on a page while still getting the performance of that page being mostly static, this is a great opportunity to bring something like that in, especially for things like dashboards or tools along those lines. This allowed spot loading at the very component level, so that you're not having to re-render the whole application.
Yeah, and the technology is cool because it streams the whole response in, but most of the response, like the header of the footer of the site and all the stuff that never changes, is just static. So that's like pre-rendered ahead of time, partial pre-rendering. And then, but we were going to actually server render just like the chunks that says, hey, Aaron, you have this many things in your cart or whatever, or like the personalized stuff. And that's still loaded with the same response, right?
Absolutely. And we've got a lot of examples of that up on our GitHub right now. Quite a few new personalizations and different repos that are available now for that.
So these are proof of concept repos that you've shared publicly, that you've built for folks to say, hey, this is as an example of how to do this in the wild.
Absolutely. Yeah. Take a look.
Cool. And a lot of that's combined with authentication, right? So it's like when the user's not authenticated, you come to the homepage, you get like the standard experience, but when you log in, now you get like the members only experience, and it's the same code, right?
That's it. And yeah, it's definitely tied to a lot of your members side of things, where that personalization is actually bound to somebody.
Right. And I mentioned middleware earlier. So middleware can participate in this too. So like, for instance, if I was doing regional personalization, the middleware that runs on the in the CDN, right, on the edge, it could determine, oh, this person is in this region or something like that, and set some like a header or a cookie. And then our partial pre-rendering could take that. Is that a use case that like is very popular?
It's growing in popularity for sure.
Yeah, and I think if we get adapters so that more people can deploy Next.js easily, so that their middleware actually does run on the edge and supports all the functionality, then it won't be just the Vercel and Netlify customers that can take advantage of that. That would be cool.
Absolutely, and we're seeing big development in the middleware, and it's a focus of Vercel's right now for sure.
The weird thing is, like, why the heck is it called middleware? It doesn't run in the middle; it runs at the edge.
Absolutely. Well, we didn't have the edge when we were defining terms like middleware. So.
Yeah, because middleware comes out of like, that's a very common thing for like web API development and stuff like that, and like normal web apps, right? But Next.js is that they're trying to fit in with other things and make a similar term, or like, what was all that about?
That's absolutely it. It's trying to be familiar and developer experience friendly.
Right. Do you think Next.js does give a good developer experience?
Absolutely phenomenal. Out of all the products that are out there, it is one of the best.
And so developers have chosen this framework because it gives a good experience and it has some good features and stuff like that. Have they always done the best job? Like, is there anything where they've kind of tripped up a little bit?
Oh, they've definitely taken their own, way about things, and of course not necessarily following full standards of what the industry might be.
Yeah.
But that uniqueness is what positions them to deliver the services through something like Vercel that they do.
Love it. That's awesome. It's cool. Thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, no problem.
We'll chat later.
Talk to you then.
Bye. We will keep Aaron kind of in the background in case you have any questions. We can always bring him back on. In the meantime, we did have another guest on our team who we wanted to bring on as well to talk a little bit about GraphQL and React server components. And that is our friend Kevin, who is sometimes upside down, but always aligned. Hey, Kevin.
This time I'm aligned. This time. How's it going, guys? Oh, not bad. Not bad. Just hanging out.
So what do you work on in Agility?
Yeah, I started out as a full stack developer, so I've actually touched a lot of the stack in our product. Right now, though, I'm mostly focused on backend work, so touching our APIs and getting the data in and out from Agility.
Sweet. So you like, if Aaron's kind of him and his team, and we're kind of working on like SDKs and starters, you're on just like one level behind that, where it's like the APIs and stuff that are driving all that. That's really cool. And what is your like favorite kind of API that think that's the coolest thing? Like, is it GraphQL? Yeah. Is that the one, or what's?
I think GraphQL is definitely probably the coolest offering from our Fetch API. I think the coolest thing about the GraphQL API is that we actually have a unified filtering system. So regardless of whether you're using GraphQL or if you're just using the regular content fetch, the query language is the same. So that's something that's really useful, and I think lends a hand to the developer experience. But if I were to push either GraphQL or the regular Fetch API onto folks, I'll definitely choose the GraphQL API. I think being able to specify exactly what you want from the API is a huge benefit.
Yeah, like GraphQL versus REST has kind of been like a thing that developers kind of bounce between. And I think a lot of developers they may be familiar with like a REST API, but maybe not as familiar with GraphQL. Is it easy to get started on, or how is it like for learning that?
I think it's not that hard at all. I think all you need is a couple of examples, and you can definitely use the playground that we have attached to the CMS in product. So you just go to our settings page, API, and then play around in the GraphQL playground that we have hooked up there. And I think you'll be up and running in no time. And of course, if people have issues, they can always reach out to support.
so you can build your query in like the playground thing and build that, and then essentially just copy and paste the query into your React code, right?
You got it.
Next.js. Now, what's interesting about Next.js is that it now supports server like components that run on the server. So I can put my GraphQL data access code right in the component.
Pretty much. They have a sort of separation of concerns in terms of a component, when you have server components versus the client. And the server components, they're asynchronous. So that's where you would do your data fetching, and then you pass that along to the client components. Actually, when they first came out with that, I couldn't really wrap my mind around it. But I think the thing that actually clicked for me is when the naming conventions of your files follow what the component actually does. So if you name if it's a server component, you name it as a server component. For some reason, that made my brain click with what is actually going on in terms of the project structure.
Right. So a good pattern would be if you have like, say, a post listing component. So a component's going to list a bunch of blog posts or something like that. You might have like post listing.server.tsx. So that's the one that does your data access, and then that maybe passes that data to the client component, postlisting.client.tsx, that actually is, maybe it's like an infinite scroll, or maybe it's got a pager or something like that. It's got the client component side of things, and so one does the data access and one does. Is that a good pattern, you think?
I believe so. I think that's exactly what I would do if I were to start out on a Next.js app. I think that, you still can hit the API from the client component. It would just mean that you would have to do some extra wrapping within the project itself in terms of your API routes. But, it's really clean and really simple once you get used to it.
So your setup that you use is a little different. So first of all, you have a keyboard that's like not connected, right? You have a disconnected keyboard.
Yeah, I do. I can show it to the fans right now.
Sure.
this is what it looks like.
That's crazy.
So that's one half, and the other half is kind of separate.
Yeah. What did you say, Brendan?
Said I could never.
I thought you were going to say that's so dope, because it's totally dope.
So dope. Well, it's also really dope, but I could never.
Okay. So, but you also, when you're coding, like you don't touch your mouse very often. How do you make that work?
Yeah, I think it takes a little bit of getting used to, and it's a lot of time invested into developing your own keyboard shortcuts for certain things. There are tools out there that help you with that on different platforms. I use what's called a window management system. So if I wanted to go to a specific window, it's sort of a touch away, so to speak.
Yeah.
It does require a little bit of getting used to, but I think for enthusiasts like myself, it's definitely worth it.
And you use Vim?
I use Vim, and I'm on Linux. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not the normal just, hey, I'm in Visual Studio Code that most people do. You're using Vim, and so do you find that your productivity has increased since then, or like you invested a lot of time in like learning that and everything?
Yeah, I think my productivity is not just increased, but I think the level of satisfaction that I get from coding has increased as well. I talk about this for hours, to be honest with you. It's a lot of it. The way that I would look at it is it's micro problem solving. So you have a problem to solve, and then Vim is the interface in which you solve a little micro problem in terms of how do you do something as efficiently as possible in terms of editing text. Now, that's not to say that I don't use Visual Studio Code, because I absolutely do, especially when I want to do step-through debugging. And then I've also started using Cursor for AI-generated code. It's mostly, I think, another tool for the job. And I think the more tools you have in your tool set, the more effective that you can be as a developer.
Yeah. Well, I didn't preload anything about that. I didn't ask you to talk about Vim, but I know it's one of those things that you're super passionate about. And I know when you and I pair program sometimes that you're in Vim, and I just noticed like it's just a super focused workspace. You just have like just your text file. That's it, and no other And Visual Studio Code used to be more simplified. It's a lot more complex now. There's a lot more sort of stuff vying for your attention kind of around the edges. And I really like the focused work. And so you're very much a focused individual when you're coding. So that's cool.
Yeah, I have only one screen. I only have one screen open at a time. I try not to have more than one monitor. That kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And you, because you work on some of like the really, really key backend code, like you worked on our GraphQL endpoint, right? And you actually have some stuff that you're working on that we haven't released yet that will actually add some more filtering for certain customers and stuff like that. It's pretty exciting, right?
Oh yeah, totally. I'm super excited to see what more improvements that we can make to GraphQL. It's coming down the pipeline, and I hope our customers are excited about it, because I am.
I'm excited too, man. Thanks for joining.
Awesome.
No problem. Anytime.
I can take care, Kevin.
See ya.
Kevin will also be hanging out in the background, so if you have any questions, any follow-up questions, we can always bring him back on to answer those. And do want to take a second just to remind everybody who's joining us that this is your session too, so feel free to jump in the comments, leave questions, interrupt us whenever you'd like. We can always take a breather to answer any questions you might have.
Brendan, we should have had like a commercial break. This would have been perfect like time to no, a word from our sponsor.
Yeah, this is brought to you by, I was going to say, Agility CMS. It's brought to you by, there you go. Our Agility CMS logo.
Ooh, look at the swag. I got the mug. This is kind of a retro mug. It's like, I don't think we produce these anymore.
No, every time I see that mug, I want it. The Agility yellow inside, I think it's great.
Got the yellow inside. Yeah, pretty nice. I used to keep my pens in it, and like there's a Sharpie mark that I cannot get off.
Oh, well, that's just there forever. It's just a reminder.
Yeah, no, it's special. My mug has a tattoo.
Okay. All right, we got one more person that we want to bring in, who's Derek, our front end guy. He's gonna talk about general front end with Next.js, Tailwind, and Web Studio. So let's bring on Derek, who wields Tailwind like a lightsaber. Hey, Derek.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me.
It's good to have you, man. So what do you work on with Agility? Like, what's your area of expertise?
So I generally handle anything within our manager app, anything UI, UX related. I would have a hands-on our Agility website, and that's kind of like my two areas of focus in Agility.
Nice, sweet. And And in terms of Next.js, what do you want to teach folks today?
I just have a few opinions on Next.js. I mean, the way I see it, React is the front end portion, and Next.js is going to be your full stack kind of like implementation of your website, web application, whatever it is. And my opinion is Next.js is great, but there could be some fallbacks that a lot of developers get into, right? Like basically, you can run. It's really an out of the box solution, but the learning curve is just a lot more, and Next.js really pushes you towards like the performance best practices, but it's not really foolproof. If you rely for example, if you rely too much on SSR too liberally, you're going to bloat your get server props. You forget your dynamically import heavy components, then your app is going to be slow as a turtle. See, the framework doesn't really save you from bad architecture, but it's very opinionated in a way that it's great as a stepping stone. And the way I see like Next.js going too, right? And this is just my opinion. I don't know if for Cell being like your standard like deployment solution is great for like the industry as a whole.
Yeah.
Too. I don't know. Like I feel like competition is great.
Well, and interesting to think about like React itself. So we're on React 19. React 19, you can kind of only get like the way, even if you go to react.org, the framework. So there used to be, you had like the Create React app that you could install with React 17. And I don't think they did that with React 18. So you couldn't just install React as an SPA. You had to install it with Next.js. Now our front end is a React app. We're not using Next.js on our front end because, and for a regular SPA, would you say Next.js is a good choice?
I don't think so. I don't think you need all the extra functionalities of Next.js. I think a React app, just like what we have, is enough to get you going.
If you just need
and
the front
customize
end,
too.
Yeah,
to what
we use Vite as our build. So that's interesting. Cool. And then and so give me your opinion on Tailwind.
So I started in this industry while supporting IE 7, 8, 9, and I felt like as a younger self, I really enjoyed solving these solutions, like these layout style solutions with just pure CSS. Right? Tailwind makes everything easier for beginners or people who don't like CSS, and that is why I think. So first of all, I think Tailwind's success is because us as developers, we actually don't like writing CSS styles. So that's why Tailwind is so successful. But at the same time, it makes your code pretty much unreadable. You go into any component, you have like class name who spans like 2 to 3 lines, and code readability for me is a huge thing. Like I can't really go into code and just see like 20 different classes on a single div and then try to get through it and try to debug it. It's actually much harder too.
Yeah, I've noticed that when I've worked with code where people have copied and pasted the code output directly from Figma, the Tailwind code that it creates, which is like, to me, crazy. So many like rings and shadows and all kinds of crazy stuff in there. I find it really hard to use. So it's like Tailwind is a great tool, but it isn't like the end all and be all. Just like Next.js, great tool, but it's not the end all and be all.
Yeah, most of the time I end up just copy pasting a bunch of Tailwind classes.
Yeah. Interesting. Cool, man. All right. Well, I appreciate you talking about. Well, let's talk a little bit about Web Studio. So one of the great front end experiences in Agility is the ability to preview your site and actually do like live editing, which is very, very cool. But how do I enable that in my Next.js project?
So what you want to do is you got to download our SDK, and then all you have to do is actually decorate your divs with whatever the field name and field ID is, and then you have Web Studio set up right away for you. So it's a really easy out of the box solution to set up your Web Studio, and I really think that this is a huge improvement we made to our app.
Yeah. So like, because as a developer, like a lot of times, especially with headless CMS, and Agility headless CMS, a lot of the times a developer only thinks about their own experience first. Like, hey, I want to get this site out. And of course, the developer experience is super important. But the marketer experience is something that a developer can enable if they sort of do what you were saying, decorate your stuff and follow the best practices there, because then now they get the better preview experience inside Agility with their Next.js site. And does it take a long time to do?
Absolutely not. I mean, you're just copy pasting an attribute to your divs, right? So it's a lot of copy pasta, but yeah, the end result is worth it, and your content managers and your marketers are going to thank you for it.
I think I love that copy pasta. That is amazing. I think that workflow of copying and pasting code is actually something that we used to frown on, but now we don't frown on it as much as we used to. What's your opinion on that, Derek?
I think you should still understand what you're copying and pasting to begin with. You can't just, that's why I haven't been replaced by an AI yet. So, but yeah, copy pasting it's fine, but it's very mundane task. And what I find is you need to really understand where you're copy pasting and where you're pasting it, and still be able to make it readable. It's a huge thing.
Yeah, right on. Cool, man. Well, thanks for jumping on. I appreciate you, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah, thank you for having me, guys.
All right, take care, Derek. And we do have a question as well from Connor that I'll pop up on the screen here, and we can bring Aaron back up to help out with that.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey.
Great. Thanks for jumping back on. So Connor, we've seen Connor in our community Slack. By the way, join our community Slack, and you can interact with folks like Connor and Aaron and myself, and all of our folks are on there. This is a great question. First of all, because it's one of the things about Next.js we didn't talk about is like they changed the whole router system a few versions back, but you can still use the old system in the new, which I really appreciate, because our documentation site, so agilitysms.com/docs, still in the Pages router. It's a big enough site that it's like we just haven't bothered to move it yet. But our new site, our main website is on the new router, the app router. So it's like you can kind of mix and match and stuff like that too. So what's going on with Connor here, do you think, Aaron?
It looks like he's having some data loading lag, essentially, probably affecting his TTFB, essentially having too much data in a component that is continually re-rendered. Or essentially, but it's creating issues within hydration here for him. So probably what he wants to do is, as I suggested, look at something like PPR, which allows you to kind of put that suspense and fall back while that data is loading in that specific component, still allowing the rest of the header to render.
But you'd have to switch to the app router for that.
Oh, true. I apologize.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think PPR is a perfect example of a problem they're trying to solve, but they had to come up with a new infrastructure and a whole new routing model to kind of do that. It's kind of tricky with the Pages router because you're limited to sort of the little bit more old school loading stuff. So there is the ability to load. Have you used the dynamic loader, Aaron?
Oh, I have. Yep.
Yeah, so the dynamic loader is one where that can help you. There's also, you can use lazy loading, but I think dynamic is that a dynamic router kind of replaces lazy loader. I'm correct in that, I think,
yes,
right?
That's correct.
So I would recommend maybe looking at the dynamic loader so that you'd only load a component once you need it. That's one thing to note. And what's interesting about Pages router is it still does run on the server, right? So like this is where it's not as clear about when it's running. But those components still do run on the server, and if you keep them as slim as possible in terms of like the other imports, then that's the best thing to do there. But it's kind of, I think I wouldn't say that's a dead end, but that's one of the things that makes Pages router tough, because you kind of get a lot of JavaScript that's delivered with your site, and you can't control that.
Yeah, and one of the biggest reasons and why I'm a proponent for switching to 15 is, again, that reduction of that JavaScript bundle, the increased performance that comes with it. Yeah. One of the best upgrades you could do on your platform is to get into a modern 14 or 15 using the app router.
And yet we still haven't done it on our doc site because it's not a problem yet. It's still getting pretty good. Like our time to first byte's still pretty good. We're still getting pretty good page load score. So it hasn't been a problem. It's when it starts to be a problem. But then the double-edged sort of that is like, it's not only a problem, but it's like, now I have so much code, it's harder to move. And so that's where Connor is. It's a tricky situation. Is there a way you can do it incrementally?
You can. And Next.js does support both the app router and the page router. So it does provide you a migrational path into using that, where you don't have to convert your full code base today.
Right. It's tricky because with Agility sites, you only have one slug. So you'd have to end up with kind of two slugs, one for the app router, one for the Pages router. So that would be tricky.
Well,
But
I think
it's
that's kind
doable.
of one of our advantages is the fact that we don't have a massive amount of code that you have to go and update to do these kinds of overhauls.
A lot of components though, but not a lot of routes. There's only a few routes, but a lot of everyone's got their own thing. But it's definitely would like to work with you more on that one, Connor, to help you in the migration or even just with the component loading. That's a great problem. Sorry, that's not a great problem. It's a terrible problem. It's a great question and a great challenge.
Excellent, for sure. We can follow up on that too.
Brilliant.
I think we have time. We actually had a quick internal question or comment come up as well from our LinkedIn.
Ooh.
So
Well,
the non-techie, how will AI impact Next.js from the dev and marketer side?
Whew. I mean, I don't want to get too deep into it. Actually, I did. There's one question that I wanted to ask Aaron before that I didn't get to. It was like, what about Vercel's AI toolkit for Next.js? Have you looked at that at all? And would you recommend that to developers who are trying to build an AI agent?
Super interesting topic. Again, could go on for hours, but what's a tech discussion without AI in it? So here we go. The Vercel AI SDK, it's absolutely phenomenal. Provides the level of abstraction that most developers need and want when dealing with AI. The use chat hook and some of their newer components are phenomenal. They make building AI agents a breeze. You can snap in your own models. You can write your own structured flows and really roll your own agentic pipelines exceptionally fast. And now what I'm most excited for is their beta 5 release, which introduces language model v2, which is a lot of the newer stuff that we're seeing out of Anthropic and Gemini to support even better development.
So what? And so Vercel is they're not, like they just had their conference earlier this week. They're now calling themselves the AI Cloud, which is interesting. What I think is really cool about that, from my perspective, is AI is pretty good at writing React and Next.js code, probably better than any other framework. And so I think from that perspective of the ability for developers to like automatically boilerplate code and to kind of get proof of concepts up really quickly, the fact that AI is really good at writing React code is really special. And really unique, that like it's way better at doing that than like .NET code or something like that, right? And is that your experience too, Aaron?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the reasons why Next.js is going to continue to be a big player in like the modern web platform space, because it interacts with it, makes it easy to build AI agents, just like Aaron was saying, like use that AI SDK. And by the way, you do not have to host that on Vercel, right? You can use the AI SDK and host wherever you want.
Absolutely. And that's kind of the genius of it. You can host it wherever you want, and you can bring in any provider that's in the space.
Right.
And that's, we're bridging those gaps of, these multi-models and what's the right one. Now you can use them all.
Right. Yeah, you don't hear about that as much as some of the other things about Next.js. So that's a really cool kind of open source thing that they do. And then on the flip side, if you're actually trying to write code quickly and use AI to write code, it writes real good Next.js code. And so I think that's a really cool thing to try to look into the future. So that's great.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you again for joining us. If you're still here, you're still watching, we appreciate it. If you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe so that you see our future webinars. We try and do one every single month. And if you're watching on LinkedIn or on Instagram, be sure to follow us for the exact same reason. Thank you guys again for hopping on. Thank you to Derek and to Kevin for joining us as well. And we will see everybody in the next webinar.
Thanks, team. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you.